If you were to ask someone about Woodrow Wilson, they would probably tell you about his presidency during World War I and also the League of Nations. But they probably wouldn't tell you about the man that Wilson was named after, Dr. James Woodrow, who was his uncle. They might be able to tell you about the controversy that surrounded Wilson's presidency, both in the U.S. entering World War I and also the League of Nations. But they probably wouldn't highlight how this was an aspect that the two namesakes had in common. Dr. James Woodrow's life was full of controversy because of his fighting spirit and strong convictions. While it was political controversy that surrounded Woodrow Wilson, it was religious controversy that surrounded Dr. James Woodrow.
James Woodrow was born in Carlisle, England in 1828. His father was a Presbyterian minister who served as a missionary in Canada and then settled in Ohio. James graduated from Jefferson College and spent several years teaching in Alabama. At the age of 24, he became a professor of natural sciences at Oglethorpe University, a Presbyterian college in Georgia. The summer before he began at Oglethorpe, he studied science at Harvard University. Then in 1855, he took leave from Oglethorpe and studied for 2 years at the University of Heidelberg, where he received a Ph.D. Then in 1859, he became licensed to preach in the Presbyterian Church. In 1861, Woodrow accepted the position of Perkins Professorship of Natural Sciences in connection with Revelation at Columbia Theological Seminary in South Carolina. He was the first person appointed to this position, and in his inaugural address he listed several points that would later cause controversy, points that he believed revealed the conflict between religion and science. These issues included the age of the earth, the length of time that man was on earth, the existence of pre-Adamite animals on the earth as indicated by fossils, the flood of Noah and whether it deluged the entire world or just a civilized portion, the unity of the human race, the introduction of death into the world, and the whole subject of chronology. In his speech, he also confirmed his belief in the authenticity of the literal word of the sacred scriptures. Overall, this speech made a strong appeal for freedom of inquiry. While Dr. Woodrow firmly believed in the truth of the Bible, he also believed that the Bible did not tell every detail and that man should be free to find the answer to these questions. This was the beginning of his controversial career that would ultimately culminate in a heresy trial. In April of 1863, he published an article in the Southern Presbyterian Review entitled Geology and Its Assailants, which foreshadowed his later fight for freedom to teach the theory of evolution. In this article, he discussed how the progress of science was continually resisted by the Church, a fact that should not be. In addition, he acted as treasurer of foreign missions of the Southern Presbyterian Church, but in 1871 he was discharged for dishonesty in administering this office. In order to declare his good name, he demanded a trial, during which he was accused of using the office to gain personal wealth. Then, on May 7, 1884, Dr. Woodrow delivered an address on evolution before the Alumni Association of the Columbia Seminary. In this address he stated, "All who believe that the creation described in the Bible was the origination of the ancestors of the organic forms that have since existed cannot help believing in the hypothesis of evolution. As regards the soul of man, which bears God's image, and which differs so entirely, not merely in degree, but in kind from anything in the animals, I believe that it was immediately created, that we are here so taught, and I have not found in science any reason to believe otherwise." In other words, Dr. Woodrow believed in a doctrine of descent with some modifications. This belief caused charges of heresy to be passed against him. Woodrow Wilson, then a graduate student at Johns Hopkins University, wrote to Ellen Axson, his sweetheart, about it, saying, "If Uncle Jay is to be read out of the seminary, Dr. McCosh of Princeton University ought to be driven out of the church, and all private members like myself ought to withdraw without waiting for the expulsion which should follow belief in evolution. If the brethren of the Mississippi Valley have so precarious a hold upon their faith in God that they are afraid to have their sons hear aught of modern scientific belief, by all means let them drive Dr. Woodrow to the wall." Dr. William Adams, who brought the charges against Dr. Woodrow, said that Woodrow was not of sound doctrinal belief and should lose his teaching position. These charges weren't sustained, and so in November of 1886, Dr. William Adams brought his charges against Dr. Woodrow to the Synod of Georgia. This time, Dr. Adams secured a decision against Woodrow. Dr. Woodrow was asked to resign from his teaching position at the seminary, and when he refused, he was dismissed. This was not the end of the battle, however, because Woodrow firmly believed that his actions and beliefs did not contradict with the Bible, because the Bible doesn't teach science. The trial continued with Woodrow appealing the court's decision and even questioning the motives of Dr. Adams, who claimed that Woodrow was not a scientist, should not act like he was one, and was acting in a way unbecoming of his position. Dr. Woodrow insisted that he was not teaching false principles, that his belief that Adam had animal ancestors was not inconsistent with the sacred scriptures, and that he hadn't subordinated scripture to science, and he still believed in the final authority of scriptures. He continued to teach science at the University of South Carolina, holding to his belief concerning the origins of man, but more importantly, freedom of inquiry, and he was not alone.